10 regular objects that look nothing like they used to. Number 1. The baby stroller. It's not uncommon to see parents walking with their baby in a stroller. If you've ever gone shopping for a stroller, you'll have noticed that the stroller business is serious. There are strollers with all sorts of specifications related to safety, performance, and durability. Parents today go about buying a stroller the same way they would go about buying a car. The stroller that parents are using today looks nothing like the first strollers that were ever invented. The first strollers were made back in the 1700s, and they were custom-made. The only way you could afford one is if you were very wealthy. The first stroller wasn't very sturdy either, and they were meant to be pulled behind you rather than being pushed in front of you. It wasn't until the mid-1800s that the push stroller was created, and even that looked quite a bit different than the ones we see today. By the 20th century, strollers were basically bassinets on wheels. Today, strollers have sleek, aerodynamic designs. They have big tires for traveling on all types of terrain, and they look nothing like the original. Number 2. The phone. The way the telephone has changed over the last 20 to 30 years is insane. Today we carry our phones with us wherever we go, and they look basically the same. Whether it's an iPhone or an Android, they all are sleek, slim, they can fit in the palm of your hand. When the first phone call was made 140 years ago, that phone looked a lot different. The equipment was bulky, and you had to hang it on the wall and talk to the wall. In the 20th century, the phone was large, it had a huge handset, and there was a cord that ran from the handset to the base. Soon the rotary phones became push buttons, and then cordless phones were introduced in the late 1970s. Even the first cell phone itself was huge. It was so big you could barely hold it in one hand. In fact, it was nicknamed the Brick, and now you see why. Kind of makes you wonder how much the phone is going to change in the next 20 years. Number 3. The vacuum cleaner. The vacuum cleaner goes way back to the early 1900s. People were getting tired of sweeping their floors, and the first vacuum cleaner was invented. It had a foot-powered pump that was attached to a hose. In 1907, William Hoover invented the first upright vacuum that was powered by electricity. Over the next 100 years, the vacuum's overall design didn't change all that much. The materials to make the vacuums did change quite a bit, however it remained pretty much the same over the years. It wasn't until the early 2000s that it changed again. This is when the robotic vacuum was introduced. Roomba was the first, and then others followed. These vacuums don't have a hose or a cord. The robotic vacuum rolls around the home, vacuuming things up, and then returns to the charging dock to prepare for the next use. Number 4. The car. Cars are everyday items. Unless the car is rare, people don't really give cars on the road a second look anymore. The car today is much different than the first car that was introduced over 100 years ago. The first car had wheels and seats, however, that is where the similarities stop. The first true car had no doors, no windows, no windshield. It was designed by Carl Benz, and it looks nothing like today's vehicles. It had carriage wheels and a 1-horsepower engine. Today, even the cheapest cars look nothing like that. Today we have SUVs, vans, even hybrid cars. Number 5. Keys. Today, most keys all look alike. They're made of metal, and they have teeth and different patterns depending on the lock that they fit into. The original keys looked like metal openers, and they were used by the Egyptians. Even keys 100 years ago were totally different than they are today. These keys are still in use today, though, but they're decorative, and people use them more as like keychain to hold their real keys. Car keys have also changed over the last 20 years. Today, most keys hold a computer chip which makes the car and all of its parts start. Even hotel keys have changed. Where you used to have an actual key, today you're given a card to unlock the door to your room. Today, more and more people are using a fingerprint key system to unlock doors and even smartphones. Number 6. Sunglasses. Over the years, the shape and style of sunglasses are in style one day, out of style the next. Today's sunglasses are used to block the sun and to create a fashion statement. That wasn't always true, though. The first pair of sunglasses were made 800 years ago. and they were used to protect people from the blinding rays of the sun. They had two different types of sunglasses, one for traveling through the Arctic and one for traveling through the desert. Not only did the use of sunglasses change over the years, the materials did as well. Number 7. Computers. Over the last 20 to 30 years, the computer and its technology has changed drastically. The first computer was a massive device that took up an entire room. It wasn't until the late 70s, early 80s that the home PC was introduced. Suddenly, there were Tandy, Commodore 64s, IBM computers on the market. The keyboards were thick and they had massive disk drives and very heavy monitors. Also, the screens had monochrome color. Today, though, the desktop computer has a small tower and a thin monitor. We also have laptops, which can go anywhere, and tablets and smartphones, which are essentially tiny computers. Number 8. Toilet. The toilet has changed a bit over the years. The first toilet was just a chamber pot. It could also be an outhouse or a hole in the ground. Even kings and dignitaries didn't have toilets. They sat on a seat and their waste fell through a large shaft into a room or in the moat below. With the invention of indoor plumbing came the invention of the toilet that we have today. Over the last 20 years, the toilet has changed again. There are self-flushing toilets, toilets with heated seats, and toilets that light up inside. We even have low-flow toilets today to save water. Number 9. The television. The television is a perfect example of one of the 10 regular objects that look nothing like they used to. The first televisions were developed in the 1930s and the 1940s. As more programs were developed, the television became more popular. In the 50s and 60s, most families had black and white televisions. The sets were bulky and the screens were tiny. Later, color televisions were introduced, as were remote controls. In the 2000s, the big box on the back of televisions was removed and the televisions were thin. They were known as flat screens, and the television grew. At one time, a 50-inch screen was a luxury. Today, it's not uncommon to see a 60- or 70-inch television in somebody's home. They're also hung on the wall now. Number 10. The tampon. The first tampon was used by the ancient Egyptians, and it was made from the papyrus plant. In the 5th century, Greek women wrapped lint around a piece of wood. The Romans used wool, paper, grass, and vegetable fibers. It wasn't until 1929 that the modern-day tampon was introduced. By the mid-30s, Tampax started selling tampons in stores.